Welcome to the Geek Soup podcast, a twice-weekly show where we talk about all things pop culture to tickle your nerd bone. No matter where you're coming from, no matter who you are or who or what you identify as long as you don't identify as a serial killer or Lord Voldemort, you are welcome here. This is a safe space for you. Welcome to the soup. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I just want to say thank you for sticking around, especially after I didn't post more than once last week, just out of respect for September 11th. So today, we're going to take a little break from BioWare, but don't worry, we'll get back to them eventually. Especially as more develops in terms of potential Mass Effect remaster, and then of course the next Dragon Age game. But today, I really want to focus on another fandom that has had as much an effect, if not more, on me that these video games have, and that is, of course, Jurassic Park. I'm feeling like this might evolve into a two-part episode as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The next movie, of course, is currently filming, Jurassic World Dominion, and let me just preface that with saying that when I say Jurassic Park, I mean the entire series. I'm of that generation that it will always be Jurassic Park for me. I cannot bring myself to say Jurassic World. So if I mess up on that and I say Jurassic Park Dominion, you know what I really mean. It's just my age. Anyway, we know that we get new dinosaurs. If you haven't seen the news, they had some on-set photos of people walking around with new dinosaur heads on sticks. And I cannot recall the name of that right now, so I apologize for just calling it heads on sticks. But it looks really, really cool. Kind of just looks like your run-of-the-mill quote-unquote raptor, but it is technically a new dinosaur. We also know that the OG trio from the first movies is coming back. And Jeff Goldblum, I just love him, and he must be protected at all costs. Okay, guys? If shit goes down, we must protect Jeff Goldblum at all costs. He's giving us little teasers. So my Dinomania is going, well, manic. I grew up on the first three movies. And yes, I will include Jurassic Park 3 in that list. I will admit, and this is, I don't know is this hard for me to admit? It wasn't the best. And if Sam Neill hadn't been in it, I don't think it would have been worth it. I think Sam Neill as Dr. Grant in that movie was the seller. It just kind of fell flat. I'll go into that a little bit more, and I'm going to talk about that on Patreon as well. So make sure that you join me over there and stay tuned to the end to find out how you can join me over there. And so after Jurassic Park 3 and the disappointment I felt even in my young age, because I wasn't that old when they came out, I was cautious about the Jurassic World movies, especially when the first one came out, even though I knew that Bryce Dallas Howard and Chris Pratt were going to star in them. But I'll relent that the first Jurassic World movie impressed me. I mean, when I heard the plot summary before seeing the movie, I was extremely skeptical, and it was one of those ones that was like way before we even knew it was going on. It was like Chris Pratt trains raptors and they kill another dinosaur, and it's like, oh god, that sounds awful. But it was okay. I mean, these movies are near and dear to me in ways that I'll explain later, but I was actually quite pleased with how Colin Trevorrow handled the first Jurassic World movie as the director. Second was okay, certainly nowhere near Lost World caliber, and my hopes for the third one are high. And I think I speak for most Jurassic Park fans when I say that. So before I get into my first point, I want to segue early into one of my favorites. Well, I only have two segments, so it's one of my favorite segments. What I gave a fuck about today. So this is super pertinent for this entire episode, and I apologize if I'm going to start crying because it's really important to me. I am so thrilled to hear this news. As of September 3rd, Brazil now joins only 3 other countries, Australia, New Zealand, and Norway, as providing equal pay for both male and female members of their national teams. This is massive. And I get emotional about it because As a female who has worked largely in tech and male-dominated industries, the amount of inequality that I faced and that I still face is quite heartbreaking. It's really hard to overcome. And I can only imagine what it's like for people of color. I mean, I am a white, native English-speaking woman, and if I'm struggling, then they are struggling tenfold to what I'm experiencing. So while this might seem like a little thing to some people, it's a huge step forward for many equality movements, and I will give a fuck about this every single day. Huge props. Congrats, Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, Norway. You guys are really setting a very important precedent. Whew. Okay, deep breath. I got a little emotional there, but it is a really great way, even though I got emotional, to transition into talking about what the female representation in Jurassic Park and, to an extent, Jurassic World has meant to me. So it's no secret that Dr. Ellie Sattler, who's played by Laura Dern, is a badass. She's smart, she's independent, and she takes action where action is needed. And it kind of reminds me, in Dragon Age Inquisition, Cassandra Pendergast says a line once you're getting to know her. She says that and this is a quote, "I will not stand in the fire and complain that it's hot." And that is the kind of queen that Ellie Sattler is. And I sincerely hope that they will honor and highlight that in the forthcoming Jurassic World movie. Because if they don't, I will burn my bra on the steps of Universal. Okay, Universal, you've been warned. And I mean, Ellie is real. She's successful and smart as a paleobotanist, which I didn't know existed until Jurassic Park, by the way. And she's portrayed truly as a partner to Dr. Grant, played by Sam Neill. We also get a small glimpse into a very real struggle for successful, motivated women in that she's teasing Dr. Grant about having kids. I mean, of course, when I first saw the movies, I was much too young to understand this struggle, but now as I navigate towards my 30s, I get this. I love my job. And as I said that, I mean, I love podcasting. I think it's great, but it's not my full-time job. And I love this, but I also love my full-time job. And I'm so privileged to be where I am, but the biological clock, and I will admit, I fully thought that it was just an old wives' tale. I was one of those people, when my husband and I got married, we were like, we don't want kids, we're going to be yuppies, we're going to be dinks, the double income, no kids. We don't want kids whatsoever. And then he turned 30, and it was like, bing! And it started ticking for me, and that's okay because I know what I want. And you know what? We're human. We can change our minds, right? So does Ellie. She knows what she wants. And I appreciate that they show her in this light, that she is still a career woman. She's still smart. She's successful. She has a passion for her job, but she also wants to start a family. And as I have gotten older, that has meant more to me than I think I probably realized. I mean, I speak as someone who struggles with infertility. I have endometriosis. Full disclosure, I'm really glad that it's becoming more of a talked about illness because it is an invisible illness. So I just want to say a quick note here to those of you who struggle with invisible illnesses, whoever you identify as, you are seen, you are heard, and your pain is valid. Like I said, I struggle with infertility through my endo, and when the first thing that someone asks you, and whether they know that you struggle with that or not, is, when are you having kids? You feel as though your identity has simply become that. The woman who doesn't have children, the man who doesn't have children, the woman or man or non-identifying person who wants them, but also has a career that they work hard for, that they'd love to tell you more about, rather than if I'm going to get my period that month or not. Because really, when you ask somebody, hey, are you pregnant? It's like, hey, are you going to get your period this month or not? So just remember that before you ask a woman when she's going to have kids, okay? My point that I'm slowly getting to is a PSA. Stop asking any woman when she's going to have kids. Stop asking any person when they're going to have children. Okay, enough of that. I think I'm off my soapbox, at least for the time being. So Ellie's career is obviously very important to her. She has a passion for it, and she knows more than just about ancient plants. In the beginning of the movie, she's right in that conversation with Dr. Grant about identifying the fossilized raptor, so she knows her shit. And she's also heavily involved in talks with Dr. Grant and Dr. Malcolm in the beginning of the movie when they're talking about DNA strands. And then her opinion, and this is the most important part, her opinion is heard and valued. Her voice is heard and valued. And this is somewhat true to how Dr. Sattler... Okay, I think I'm just going to start to go on a first name basis with these three especially, because saying Dr. blah 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 is going to get tiring. This is somewhat true to how Ellie is portrayed in the book. And if you didn't know, Jurassic Park, not the entire series, but the first two at the very least, are based on books written by Michael Crichton. And Ellie had a much bigger part in the book, and I'm talking to the first book here. There was more romantical drama in the book, but I believe that Spielberg, he tried to incorporate this as best as he could by portraying Ellie as equal as he possibly could. I mean, the book is long, so of course we're going to lose some things in the movies, just, like we did with Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. And of course we're at the mercy of the scriptwriters and the directors, but thankfully Michael Crichton, who is the author of Jurassic Park, co-wrote the movie script and consulted with Spielberg and the producers, so kind of like the Hunger Games, we know it's going to be as true to the books as it possibly can because we have the author with them. That may have been a big part of how Ellie is portrayed, but I do appreciate that there wasn't a focus on the romance between her and Alan Grant, and that they didn't include the love triangle between the three doctors that is in the book. And her and Alan aren't super affectionate, though, in the beginning of the film. You can tell that they're together. There's that scene where they're walking back down to look at the raptor fossil, and I think he sticks his hand in her back pocket, which is just like a, hey, this is my girlfriend, this is my bae, right? Okay, I'm never going to say that again. I'm a sucker for romance. I don't know if you could tell that by the amount of times that I said Garrus Vakarian's name in the last episodes. I'm honestly thankful that they kept the romance part out of the movie, because the focus of Jurassic Park is the dinosaurs, the subversion of science, and the overarching message of don't let your reach exceed your grasp. So we've already established Ellie is confident, she's well-spoken, she's smart. The thing that matters to me too is that they didn't feel the need to make her dress sexy. It wasn't like she was a Bond girl in this action horror film. And I think that this is a huge part of the entire narrative, and not even just the whole females are badass thing. It's meant to show that this is just a normal weekend, and that disaster can happen even if things seem normal, and everything was perfect because they, quote-unquote, spared no expense. In the movie, these are normal people having an abnormal experience and reacting to it in the best way that they know how. I mean, Ellie is scared, absolutely, but she's also strong. And she shows that in several different ways when, of course, shit hits the fan. First, we see it when she volunteers to go with Muldoon, who's the game warden from Kenya. The first time, right after Nedry leaves and the power goes out, and Hammond goes, to Muldoon, he goes, would you take a gas jeep and go bring back my grandchildren? And Ellie doesn't hesitate. She goes, I'm going with him. I'm going with him. Even though, okay, I'm scared, things are kind of being a little icky, but I'm going to go with him. And it's the same thing with the second time that she volunteers to go with Muldoon. After everybody's out, they're in the bunker, and Mr. Arnold, who's played by the incomparable Samuel L. Jackson, I mean, hold on to your butts, people, had to get that in, goes missing after he says he's going to go turn the power on and it's been too long. She's level-headed and focused and obviously scared, she knows something's gone wrong, but she's focused on the job that needs to be done. She isn't even derailed when John Hammond makes a blatantly sexist comment. And the way that they inserted this is I don't know if you guys watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They did an incredible episode on racism, and it was Brooklyn Nine-Nine level focus and shut down. And, Hammond doesn't seem like the kind of guy to be super sexist, even though many people of his generation, that was how they grew up, which isn't an excuse. He's a grandpa and all of this, and those are technically the people who are purveyors of that kind of non-blatant sexism, or the blatant sexism that doesn't seem ill-intentioned. And to me, that's almost more dangerous than the blatant sexism, where people are blatantly intentionally trying to be sexist. It's those who don't know that they're being sexist, or who don't intend to be vicious. when they're being sexist. And I also think that those are the people that make the best allies, because they're the ones that are easiest to acknowledge that, yeah, it was sexist, we're going to shut it down, we're going to move on, and it's not going to happen again. And that's what Ellie handles it as. How she handles it is as well, badass. She acknowledges it, she calls it out for what it is, and then she puts it to bed and she overcomes it. She shows that she's strong and that she's better than that. And that is one of the best ways that I've found to shut down sexism. Acknowledge it, call it out, kill it with logic and a level head, and then prove that you're better than that. And that's the thing. People say, oh, feminism, they say we're going to teach men to fear us. Well, to me, that's not what feminism is. Because as women, we have had fear utilized against us as a weapon. And I don't mean to just single out women. I'm just speaking from a sexism standpoint, because I know LGBTQ, Black people, people of color, everybody who is considered a minority has had fear used against them as a weapon in oppression. And how are we any better than those who have oppressed us if we use the same tactics? So we have to show that we're better than that we're stronger than that. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it is really, really hard. And again, I'm a white woman. The only real struggle I've ever known is sexism. I can only imagine how much harder it is for those who are considered more of a minority than me. For me, I'm just speaking as for me in my own personal experience, this is one of the best ways that I've found to shut this down. I think that this is a big moment, even in its simplicity in the movie. It's a really rare thing in movies, especially movies from the early 90s, and we're treated to better inclusion and better casting choices. I mean, we're treated to that more nowadays, but back then it wasn't the same. So that's why I think that it was a big moment. And if you don't agree, then that's okay, because it was a big moment for me. It was one of those moments where I realized, even at a very young age, that sexism can happen even to a beautiful, smart, successful, and incredible woman like Ellie Sattler. And that beautiful, smart, successful, and incredible woman can shut that shit down. And then that same woman can go on to live through a traumatic, terrifying experience, complete her mission, and survive. I mean, if Ellie hadn't volunteered and powered through, quite literally, they would not have gotten off that island. They would not have gotten off that island without Ellie Sattler. So Jurassic Park is, in a big way, of course, about female power. I mean, Ellie even says to herself in one of my absolute favorite lines from the first movie, man creates dinosaur. Dinosaur eats man. Woman inherits the earth. Which is a great bit of foreshadowing, by the way. And the first movie brings us some powerful females, but it's not just Ellie, which is something else that I really, really love. Even Lex morphs into a powerful badass throughout the movie. At first, she seems like the naive teenager that can't turn off a fucking light to save her life, quite literally. But then she's the one who saves the day and turns the phones and the lights on. And that's pertinent right there. I mean, let's be clear, again, they would not have gotten off that island if it wasn't for Lex too. Well, Lex was also naive and was the one that you wanted to shake and to kind of, quote Tim, turn the fucking light off. To be honest, I mean, if you think about it, and I know it's hard because we know that this is a fantasy movie, but what would you do in that situation? I mean, you're a teen girl, you're trying your best to figure out what's going on, and then there's this massive prehistoric creature that only wants to eat you, and you're scared out of your wits, and then you have your little brother that you're having to take care of. I mean, to a point, girl, same. And the thing I love about Lex is that she has serious growth throughout the rest of the movie, and instead of playing into the damsel in distress mode, she takes charge much like Ellie. I mean, Lex saves Tim by ensuring that they outwit the raptors in the kitchen, although I will relent that some of that could be argued to be luck. And of course, she is a hacker. She's not a computer nerd, she's a hacker. She figures out the park system and turns on the lights and phones and gets them out of there. She's not the same teenager that she was when she arrived. She's a young woman now. One thing that I think that this is really portrayed by is the costume choices. Did you notice how the hat that she had on disappeared at the moment when shit hit the fan? I mean, we're introduced to her. She has that hat that makes her look like a little girl. She even twirls her braid around her finger like a little girl when Alan was trying to figure out which car he was going to ride in. And the last time that we see this hat that makes her look like a little girl is when she's using it to fan herself after the car stops. And then she hits Timmy with it when he scares her. And that's the last moment of her childhood right there. That's the last moment that she's totally 100% that damsel in distress, innocent young girl child. And then from there, she evolves to scared. she's a frantic teenager, of course, but then she's into a young woman. I think that this is worthy of making her one of Jurassic Park's badass females. And there are badass females at the pinnacle of each of the plot points of Jurassic Park. Be thinking, okay, well, what about the beginning? It was Hammond who made these creatures, Alan that he sought out, Ian Malcolm that he was like, okay, yeah, he's coming, but I want Alan Grant, and then Ellie was just kind of an afterthought. Oh, I'd love to have a paleobotanist as well. But let me remind you that all of the animals in Jurassic Park are female. Remember? They engineered them that way. Okay, can I just interject here and state that, okay, I know this makes me Captain Obvious, but if you pick up on all of my direct quotes and references from the movies in this episode, then you are my new best friend and a little bit my hero. Let's talk about the most badass female of all time. Dun 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 dun! The T-Rex. She's the true savior. I'm going to say it again. They would not have gotten off that island if it wasn't for Rexy. And yes, that is what I'm going to call her, is Rexy. I don't like it, to be honest, but that's kind of what she's known in the lore, so her name is Rexy. And Rexy saved the day. And okay, guys, come on. I know that she's a dinosaur and that she doesn't really exist and that she's an animatronic and that she didn't mean to save the day. But the fact of the matter is that she did. So she ranks in my top 5 badass movie females because she also features in Jurassic World and she only gets better with age. And we'll talk about that later. This is all really an amalgamation, ooh, that's a big word, for why I love the first movie so much. I mean, for me, Jurassic Park is my healing movie. Okay, you know that old Dane Cook bit where he talks about how people like watching The Price is Right when they're sick? Jurassic Park is my Price is Right. Mainly the first movie because of the kick-ass chicks that star in it. The second movie, The Lost World, did have some good moments as well. A story like the dinosaurs evolved, and the message of don't let your reach exceed your grasp has turned into, yeah, we told you so, you money-hungry, greedy fucks. Even the poacher gets it at the end. And there is some female badassery, especially in the form of Ian Malcolm's daughter, Kelly. She's smart, and to this day, she's the only reason why I know what a troglodyte is. She's feisty, she's witty, she's beautiful, she's confident, she's so much. But she's also a teenager who, much like Lex, she gets in over her head. But by the end of the movie, she's a self-possessed young woman who can do a literal, lethal, parallel bars routine to save her dad's life. Plus, she is a young Black woman, and to have her in a role where she's kick-ass, especially in these movies, is so important. We need more roles like this for people of color. We need more roles like this for the people of color. I'm sorry, I had to say it louder and a little bit slower for the people at the back. The other female human character that we have in Lost World is Sarah Harding. She is the girlfriend of Ian Malcolm, and she is also somebody who has studied predators. She's smart, she's educated, she is much like Ellie in that she is, smart, she's beautiful, she's witty, she's confident, she is incredible. And she's also not running around the jungle in short shorts and a crop top. I'm looking at you, Jumanji, although I know that was part of the joke, okay? I think Julianne Moore did a fantastic job at playing opposite Jeff Goldblum in this role as well. She brought such a shine to it, and we all know that it's hard to outshine Jeff Goldblum. He's amazing. And though Sarah gets less badass moments than Ellie, she does have her moment toward the end of the movie, which I love that they had her do. It's on the boat. It's when Papa T-Rex gets back on the boat with his baby, and Sarah is the one to shoot the gun and trank Papa Rex. And you might be rolling your eyes at me with this. I mean, yeah, Kate, it's a chick with a gun. Okay, whatever. But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this shot in movies is the typical hero shot. Think of action films, superhero movies, etc., etc. This is typically the part where we see the hero kill or incapacitate the bad guy, and then they pose in that superhero pose, and it's typically a dude. So this wasn't just, damn, look at her with that dart gun. It was, damn, look at her save the day. Look at her save the day. Okay, before we head her into the next movies, let's take a quick break and get some Only Good News. This is Only Good News on the Geek Soup podcast. Okay, well, let's all agree that this year has pretty much been one big steaming pile of shit. Or as Ian Malcolm would say, that is one big pile of shit. I mean, yeah, okay, guys, the references don't ever stop with me. So today, in Only Good News, I am so thrilled to share that New York has turned one of the biggest piles of shit, aka the world's largest garbage dump, into one of the largest rewilding projects in the world. So it wasn't easy or quick, but damn, will it be worth it. The dump closed in 2001, and once the design was decided and a firm was awarded the work began. And they even brought in goats to help, which I love. I don't know if where you are in the world that in the spring or throughout the summer to help mow the grass of parks and within the cities and provincial parks and national parks, they bring in goats to cut down on carbon emissions from lawnmowers. They eat the grass, and then they are also world renowned for their unique eco-restorative abilities, even just beyond being grass cutters. And if you don't believe me, just Google it. Anyways, after 18 long years, lots of manpower, dirt, and even turning methane into energy to power homes, and that is a yes really, the park is set to open soon. And the rewilding project is almost complete, and it is an incredible precedent for our future. If we're thinking about it, if it takes 18 years to rewild a dump that most of us don't think twice about, how long is it going to take less fortunate states or countries? I mean, that trash is simply buried, and it takes much longer than 18 years to get rid of. But nevertheless, this is a massive first step and something that I consider very, very good news. Well, that was an important and pertinent break in this episode, especially since Jurassic Park is about man trying to tame nature, and nature is like Miley Cyrus, and it can't be tamed. In all seriousness, I'm so glad that I can laugh at my jokes, because I don't know if anybody else is. In all seriousness, though, nature is a beast, and that beast is typically best left to do its beastly thing. Same with a woman, honestly. I mean, women who are considered wild and take charge are usually the ones who end up saving the day. And luckily, Jurassic Park is full of wild women. So Jurassic Park 3, we're kind of going to gloss over, at least in this episode. I will have more content talking about Jurassic Park 3 on Patreon. This is my personal opinion. I hated the way Téa Leoni was in this movie. She was screechy. She was damsel-y, and yes, she did have a few redeeming moments, but her portrayal of the only woman in the film was so lackluster and so underwhelming for me that I cannot justify any of it enough to talk about it, to give it any more airtime in this podcast than this little snippet. The true female hero, though, is, again, Ellie. She calls the entire US military in for a rescue, and Ellie is in the movie for less than 5 minutes. If you think I'm wrong, please let me know why. If you can justify it, I would love to hear it. You can join me on Patreon, as I previously stated, or just let me know your thoughts on social media. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Let's chat about it. Okay, now that we have glossed over Jurassic Park 3, let's go into the new movies. And let's talk about the first Jurassic World in particular. So as I said, I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I think we all went through a bit of a roller coaster when we first heard about it. Because Jurassic Park is so dear to me, I was scared that they might ruin a good thing. But I was also excited because I felt like we needed a little something after Jurassic Park 3. Then I heard that Spielberg was producing and Colin Trevorrow was directing, and I was pumped. And then the plot rumors came out about Chris Pratt using the raptors to fight another dinosaur, and in my head, I could not picture anything but something super campy. So I was terrified that it would disappoint. It's like when you hear that your favorite book is being made into a movie, and you're like, please don't fuck this up. Please don't fuck this up. And there have been times where people have fucked it up. That's just how it's gone. And then there have also been times where people have done a really good job. So while I was terrified that it would disappoint, I was also excited about it. And it didn't disappoint. It was nice. I was pleasantly surprised, and I was pleasantly surprised at how they portrayed the main female character, which is Claire. Her character development has been quite fantastic, and I think that it shows a huge stereotyping of professional women, especially in the beginning. I mean, she's viewed as kind of a bitch who doesn't really give a shit about anything except her job. She pawns her nephews off to her assistant, and she can't even remember how old they are. She's also portrayed as uptight, and when she's talking to her sister, she talks about if she'll ever have kids. And I think that this was an important portrayal, and not that I was happy with how it was in the beginning, but just because how it set her up to evolve. Because that's how I feel that many people view career-oriented women, as these bossy bitches who are hyper-focused on their career and nothing else. The evolution of Claire's character helps to kind of break that wall. I mean, she literally lets her hair out and she takes charge of the situation. She runs toward the problems, again, very literally, instead of away from it. She stands up for what she believes in and what is right against intimidating men. She's still soft, she's empathetic, and she cries when she sees the suffering brachiosauruses that the Indominus has killed for sport. She protects her nephews like a mama bear eventually. She drives like a badass, and she saves the day, and she does it all in high heels. Like Lex and Kelly and Sarah, like Lex and Kelly and Ellie, because I don't know if there's any real argument that if Sarah hadn't been there, they wouldn't have gotten off the island, but for sure Lex, Kelly, and Ellie, they would not have gotten off that island if it wasn't for Claire Deering. And Claire, of course, is the reason that our other favorite badass makes a reappearance and helps to save the day, along with our newest favorite female dino badass, Blue the Raptor. I adore that they had Rexy in Jurassic World and that they made it obvious that it was the same T-Rex from the first movie. We know that it's her, of course, because of the scars on her neck from fighting the raptors in the end of the first movie. I don't know if you guys caught that. Please tell me you did. Talk about aging gracefully. I mean, this girl still packs a punch. And I also love that when Claire brings Rexy out, she smashes through that Spinosaurus skeleton to signify her dominance, since the T-Rex, obviously not Rexy, was killed by the Spinosaurus in the third movie. The thing, too, about Jurassic World, and I think that a lot of movies that are continuations of series, or they are remakes, they play a lot on, especially millennials and Gen X's sense of nostalgia. I love that they have some Easter eggs in Jurassic World, the first Jurassic World, and the second one as well. One of them was Dr. Malcolm's book, and it was in there a couple times, and I remember spotting it and being like, oh, that's amazing, I know what that is. And it's like, you're like, oh, I get that reference. You're kind of like Captain America, you get really excited. You're like, oh yeah, I get that reference. I'll talk more about these Easter eggs, and we'll have more of a discussion about this sense of nostalgia on Patreon, but I think that overall they did a fantastic job with the first Jurassic World movie. I also love, and this is a side note, Masrani's quote about how Jurassic World exists to remind us about how small we are. I think that's super poignant. Fallen Kingdom was a bit more complicated. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it, but now we start getting into some kind of heavy stuff. And I was happy to see Claire's continued character development in this movie. She's still a fighter, she has big mama bear energy over her animals, and her struggle is completely a relatable one, and it helps to make her seem normal. The thing that makes me happy about this is that it continues with this theme that we get in the first movie, the very first movie. I'm talking Jurassic Park, the OG movie. That these are normal people that are put into extraordinary, abnormal circumstances and are fighting against a corporation, a big corporation with more money and even bigger egos involved. To me, it's kind of like that statue called Fearless Girl that was once facing the bull in New York's financial district. Something seemingly small standing up against something that seems as though it could break her. And that's how I view a lot of the women in these films. That's how I view Claire in these films. I mean, though she's great, she'll never be an Ellie Sattler. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Ellie is portrayed and the kind of role that she'll have in the next film, especially because we have been treated to so many badass female characters. We also get introduced to veterinarian Zia Rodriguez. She is another badass. She is sarcastic, she's sharp, she's smart, and she thinks on her feet. I mean, she saves Blue, and then Blue saves everyone else. And I love Zia's character, and I hope to see more of her in the next films. I feel like we will, because she was there from the beginning. She was getting these dinosaurs off the island. She is part of Claire's nonprofit group, but she's also one of the very few vets who have actually worked on the dinosaurs. Plus, I mean, she's delightful. Finally, we are introduced to the youngest female, Maisie. Now, I have seen a ton of talk about Maisie's character online, and honestly, I'm torn. Of course, she's just a young girl. She has just figured out a life-changing secret about herself, and she does release the animals because they're like her, and I think that shows a lot of empathy. But on the flip side, she's just made a choice that could negatively affect humankind. On the other side of that, she made a choice that very positively affected the dinosaurs, at least in that moment. Most of the discussions that I've come across is whether or not she could be classified as a hero or villain, and honestly, I don't know. I asked myself this. I tried coming up with arguments for either side, and I just don't know if I can answer that. I empathize with Maisie completely. Not completely because I'm not a clone, but I don't think I could have watched those animals die either. And that's a tough question to ask yourself. If you were in Maisie's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have released the animals or would you have let them die? I'm torn. The logical part of me wants to say let them die. You know, they're a natural. They're absolutely a threat to pushing humans out of the top spot of the food chain. And as Dr. Grant says in the third Jurassic Park movies, what John Hammond and InGen created are theme park monsters. Nothing more, nothing less. Survival is truly of the fittest, then dinosaurs or theme park monsters are the fittest in the Jurassic World universe. Look at how much effort it took to try to take down the Indominus Rex, and that was just one. The other side of me wants to say no, let them live. This is my existential crisis part of myself talking, but humans had our shot and we royally fucked it up. I mean, maybe it's time for a little competition. Also, they are living, breathing beings, and I wouldn't let a pack of dogs suffocate to death. And you might say to me then, well, Kate, I mean, dogs don't have teeth and claws like that. And yeah, that's fair. But I think that little parts of me would die if I had to watch the dinosaurs die. This is when I open it up to you. What do you think? What would you do in that situation? We'll obviously find out more about Maisie and the direction they're taking her character in, and of course the other characters. And given that the title of the next film is Dominion, I'm sure that there will be a focus on the struggle between humans and dinosaurs. Two species separated by 65 million years of evolution just to suddenly be thrown back in the mix together. Oh god, okay, please tell me you're getting my references or else I sound like a geek. But I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm hoping that we'll continue with the trend set so expertly set by the first movie in our string of female badass characters. I hope that they bring back Ellie to be as awesome as she was and continue Claire's character development and Zia's sarcastic smart-assery. So here is to badass females in movies. Of the dino, the human, the alien, whatever variety, hi Rexy, you're still one of my favorite badasses. Until next time, geeks, stay frosty. Thanks for tuning in today, geeks. Be sure to join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/geeksoup. You can also check out our website at www.thegeeksoup.com or check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GeekSoupPod. I'm also on YouTube, and stay tuned for Geek Soup Gaming only on Twitch.